All right, Emily, thank you so much for joining us and being on the show today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. You?
I am really good, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a really beautiful day here in Kamloops, and I have to unfortunately close my blinds because the sun just rips right through. So if you see me with a real shiny face, you know why. Um, let's get straight into it because you've got I think, a really cool story in regards to how you came to own and operate your business, Less But Better. So why don't you just kind of give us a brief um, intro to your background and kind of what led you into this journey.
Absolutely. Uh, I guess it started. So I have a teaching degree. I'm an elementary specialist, but back in 2016, I decided to switch things up and go teach high school in China. And it was that move. It was moving to another country for a couple years that really showcased this less scenario. I moved with just two suitcases and I just went for it and I put all of like 80% of my things into a storage locker as people do. And it was very normalized. It was the program, you just store your stuff. And I mean now I see so many of these storage lockers being built still. And leaving all my stuff behind and just taking a few suitcases of my essentials, I ended up moving into a large apartment. In China, it's a big country. So there's this misunderstanding with apartments. They're actually really big. I had two bedrooms, a big open space, and it was totally empty and very simple. And it didn't take me long to realize that not only did I have this clear space and a clear mind, but I had so much free time. I didn't have to like move things around or tidy things up or look for stuff. And everything was just really simple. I didn't spend a lot of time on laundry or dishes. And it was there that my interest got sparked in psychology and philosophy around this concept of less. And I just spent all my spare time reading and studying and exploring this because it felt so good. And I had the time to do so. And when I was exploring this, I came across the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And his big push is to say yes, or sorry, say no to the trivial many, to say yes to the essential few. And that speaks to your career, your work, saying no to things so that you can make a bigger impact. And reading that book and just getting really inspired, I kind of set a declaration for myself when I came back to Canada. I said, I'm going to get rid of at least 60% of my belongings. I knew my storage locker was jammed full. I had no idea what was in there. I couldn't remember. I was kind of nervous to open it up again, but I managed through a really hard but committed process. I got rid of so much. It was like a multi-step thing. It wasn't just one big go. I tried like a garage sale. I tried a donation. I did another donation. And I remember the biggest purge that I did. I vividly remember like handing over this laundry basket full of stuff to the donation center. And as they were taking it from my hands, I felt this like pain in my chest. And it was very real. And I said, no, Emily, you're committed. And I followed through and I let it go. And so it didn't feel easy for me. But thinking back, it's now been 3 years since that day. I don't miss any of it. I don't think, oh, I wish I kept that. There's maybe one or two moments that I've had that feeling, but it's really not there. And so since then, I haven't accumulated. I've been way more conscious about my impact, about purchasing. I don't buy things just on a whim anymore. And it's just allowed me to have this space and time and this freedom. I don't spend time tidying or cleaning at all, really, because
Yeah.
there's nothing to move around. I maybe dust a bit here and there, but it's really been a shift. And I think I wouldn't have known to go here if I hadn't have had that experience living abroad.
Yeah, that's really cool. And the fact that you've gone to move abroad for obviously a set period of time, maybe a year or a couple of years, right? So you've already put your stuff in storage because you're going to come back, and you go into this new space. And I think that's quite unique in China that you actually, have an apartment that's quite big. I think most of the rest of the developed world, it wouldn't quite be like that. But you go into this big space where, and your immediate thought is not to fill it with stuff and items. When we're at home and we might see a room that's empty, or a corner that's got space, or a windowsill that's empty, we, for some reason, immediately feel like we have to fill that space and fill that area. And when you came home and after you read this book and you wanted to get rid of a bunch of your stuff, there must have been a process to that, and like a structure. Because if I was put in front of if I was put in front of 80% of my stuff, I wouldn't know, if I didn't have a structure or a process, what to get rid of and what not to, because obviously I have an attachment to my things and my stuff. And I think we all think that the things that we have kind of create our identity, or we think that they do. So what was kind of the structure and the process of you looking at your storage unit and kind of getting rid of things? Because there has to have been a structure in place.
Yeah, I totally see this with clients and friends and family, that the hardest part is where to start. And I believe that it's not just that it's hard to let go of things because we're attached. I think as humans, we are collectors by nature, and we collect things for a variety of reasons, and it brings us joy. And then it's this combination of throwing out and removing feels really hard. So I'm not exactly sure how I did it then, besides just being really strict with myself and just letting go of things like decor and things I'm not entirely sure. But today when I work with clients, and maybe I did this then, I have people go to the destination of where they're going to send these things, how they're going to remove them, and then work backwards. So maybe I did this then. It's choose your donation center, research, find out what they accept, what they don't accept, find out their hours, how their process is, how much they take at once, and then work backwards from there. And then say, okay. And so when you choose the destination of where these things are going, and you create containers or boxes or bins, and you fill those knowing the destination, then that really simplifies the uncertainty and this unknown. Because I think when with anything, if we don't know how to complete it or how to finally send it out, we won't do it. So I think that's what I had done, was research the best donation centers, and also switch my perspective and frame of mind from me losing or throwing out, and instead them gaining, and the community and these people in need having access to more.
Yeah,
And
that's an
so,
interesting. Yeah, we have to look at what we have and what other people don't have, and like what so many things we can do in our behaviors and our actions to help other people. And obviously, there's a big environmental aspect to having more stuff. Just want to kind of just jump back a little bit in regards to the psychology and the research of like doing all of these types of things, because I always go back to, like, in my mind, we're barely any different from humans hundreds of thousands of years ago, and they would have accumulated things, right? But these would have been literally, at one point, it would have been whatever they could carry, they would carry, and they would have to have a choice, like carrying an apple or a knife. Like, that's a big decision because they can't carry too much things at one point, and then they would have maybe woven baskets or bags and then a pocket or something, like then they can carry more stuff, and then you could, you have more space, so you can make different decisions. And then, over a big period of time, we have houses, we have mansions, we have garages, we have all this space. And then we really get lost in regards to what we need to survive, and then what we just accumulate, things that we want and things that we need, right? And with our accessibility to purchasing things, I'm not a huge, I've got a love-hate relationship with Amazon.
Me
um
too.
yeah, because regardless of what you may think of Amazon, they've created tens of thousands of jobs, and they've streamlined so much. There's a lot of good things about Amazon, but there's obviously a lot of other kind of maybe negatives. But today I ordered like a small like microphone thing today, but I really feel like now, like, I only order stuff if I like really really need it, and if I can't go and get it like from a local store or something. But like these are kind of conscious decisions that I'm making. I think that I've become a bit conscious about that, but a lot of people don't. They're not super conscious of the things that they're purchasing, because there's a big difference between something that you want and you need. So can you just maybe touch on maybe like the psychology a little bit about those things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had one more thought about the process of letting go. Um, I think it is a process. It's not all at once. I think when I did it originally, it was the easy stuff. I did like a round of it. And then every second and subsequent round, I would lean in and get rid of a little bit more. So it is a process. But with the psychology, and I mean, for me and for you too, probably, I think about the dump and the wasteland and the landfill when I make purchases, because a lot of people are missing this when they order or purchase things. They don't realize that eventually they do end up there no matter what. They can go to the donation center, but eventually they're going to just wear out enough that they will end up in the landfill, and lower quality products will end up there sooner. Um, but regarding the psychology, there's a few studies and theories that have a lot of application to this whole concept of letting go and attachment. The first one, of course, is the status quo bias, which is in all of our brains. It's this preference for not changing things, keeping things the same. Some have it stronger than others, but it's just wanting things to remain the same, and it's a real resistance to change. And it's not just like a preference; it's really ingrained in our minds, and it's hard to overcome that resistance to change. And the endowment effect is another one, and the aversion to loss. We as humans, well, the endowment effect is that we will value things higher than those who are purchasing them. And so just because we own things, we actually attach a much higher value to the objects. And so when we value things just because we own them, we're much less likely to let go, because if we let go, we might be admitting that they're not worth anything, or they're worth a lot less. And that's going against our belief system. And so it's like an uncomfortable feeling. All of this letting go it can be very, very uncomfortable. And
Why
that's
do
why
you think?
people avoid it.
Yeah, totally. Why do you think we find it so difficult to embrace simplicity and to kind of change those habits around having things? Like you say, like when you buy something, you think about the dump. I don't do that. I think about, do I actually need this thing or not? You
It's
know?
kind of the same concept in a way.
Yeah, but now that I can think about, like, that's an added aspect to my purchasing decision. It's obviously, we can, where we decide to put our money is really, really important. Whether we decide to use a huge, big global corporation, or we use something that's a little bit local. Like, I think that's an aspect of our decision making process as well, rather than just like, oh my god, I want that, I'm going to buy it. Boom. Like, there's not a lot of conscious thoughts that go into that. And obviously there's certainly a neurochemical aspect to purchasing things, whether that's online or in the mall or whatever. That's obviously an aspect as well. But like, I think just step one is probably about becoming conscious about the things that you buy. Do you need them? But yeah, like back to the question, like, why do you think we find it so difficult to embrace simplicity?
I think it's naturally extremely hard. Like to become a minimalist, I would consider myself a minimalist, but I still feel like I have a lot of some things. Like I have a lot of shoes, but to become a minimalist or to have less, it's hard. It's really not easy. And I think some people think it should be easy, just like purchasing is easy. And then once they realize that it's bringing up so much emotion and it's bringing up past traumas, it's bringing up these old stories, and it's kind of a mirror to showing us how we've shown up and the decisions we've made in the past. It can make us feel guilty for purchasing things that maybe we didn't use. um, Another one is receiving gifts. Gift giving is such a funny concept to me now because I see it so differently. Um, with gift giving, the reason people give gifts is to receive the feeling of gratitude in the moment, to receive or witness, experience that expression of gratitude. And then after that, the gift giver, it's done. The exchange is over, and you take your gift home, and the gift giver never follows up with you and is like, "Hey, how's that thing?" Unless you're my mom, because she knows I throw out a lot of gifts. But the thing is, for me, is if just because you receive a gift doesn't mean it's for you. A lot of people give gifts that they like. And so anyways, I think we feel a lot of guilt and we feel like we should hold on to things. Like there's so much should, because we don't want to create waste. We don't want to add to the landfill. We don't want to disappoint these loved ones. And so instead of disappointing other people, we disappoint ourselves and we hold on to these things for a long, long time. And we try to use them, we try to incorporate them, but it's not us. And so it's kind of like this abandonment a little bit. But anyways, I think it's just there's so many levels and there's so much psychology that I think a lot of people aren't aware of yet when it comes to behaviors and habits. And we are ingrained with an aversion to loss. That is true for all of us. So of course we're going to avoid letting go because it's related to loss.
Yeah, and obviously we're not just buying stuff for ourselves; we're buying stuff for other people as well. That's interesting. And what's the motivation behind those purchases as well? I find it with the idea of like, for me, buying stuff that I really need. That's goes into my decision making for buying things for other people, but it's really difficult to understand what somebody really needs. Like, they might want a bunch of different things, like a new golf club or something, but like they don't really need that thing. So it's like really hard to really hard for me now to put myself in a position to understand what somebody might need. So now I just ask them, what do you need? Rather than the gift being like a surprise or something that they don't know that's coming, or rather than have something practical that they actually need. Like now I've got kids, it's like everything that I want or that I need is child based.
Yeah.
So like if I know someone who's having kids, it's like it's not what you need. Like what can I get you that's going to support, it's going to be a gift for your child primarily, but it's also going to support the household. It's something functional that you can all benefit from. So I suppose with age as well, our decision making processes for purchasing things massively changes because our priorities shift from being kind of like individual with our purchase buying and gift giving to thinking about like our family and our household and things like that. With just I love to get people to, I've obviously done a bit of an intro to less but better, but why don't you if you can elevator pitch me, what is this company, and how can anybody really start the process of creating a calmer space?
Yeah, with less but better currently, it very much is a philosophy, um, in a sense. And so what I do with my clients is it's a high impact consulting work where it's one-on-one. I work in the home. I do the majority of the work, but the client will ultimately make decisions. And so I help people learn how to live a better life with less. I help guide them into a direction where they can make easy decisions, quick decisions, and choose what stays instead of choose what goes. And then they feel empowered to make this, turn this page and kind of start again when it comes to the inventory of their homes and really be selective and do it in such a high impact way that it's there's so much more space that they're able to maintain.
That's really, I like that so much because, if I was to think about helping my friend get rid of stuff, then it's literally like me holding it up, like, give, throw, keep, it's that's just not the way it works. But if you're implementing a philosophy, and I love the way that you're like, what are you keeping is the focus rather than what you're getting rid of. That's really cool. That's wonderful. Like that's such a better process at looking at these particular items. And I think if somebody's truly honest with regards to what they really want to keep, that's really valuable and really practical. I think that's a much better way of looking at these things. Just in regards to, because obviously people are welcoming you into their homes, into their offices, into their businesses to, mix things up and change things. And obviously there's a motivation behind hiring you and bringing you in. But like, I'm just interested to, because it's coming to somebody's home, especially, is quite, can be quite a volatile, invasive,
Vulnerable. Yeah.
vulnerable thing. Vulnerable is the right word for sure. So how do clients like initially respond? Because they've obviously hired you and they've got you in, but now you're in their house, like, and they know that you're going to be probably asking some tough questions and bringing some things in. So how do people usually? I'd love to have cameras in there to see people's
I
body
know.
language, because I bet everyone's like got their arms crossed and like getting really kind of defensive. But like, what have you experienced?
Well, I'll share that there are different types of people in this world, and I've worked with clients who have a really hard time with this process, and I've worked with clients who find it super easy. And so I'll start with the positive story. So recently, I was invited into a home where the mom, she she claims, and I believe her, that she just really wasn't attached to anything, and she really wasn't wanting to be involved either. And it was a beautiful process. It was one of the first times someone was so vulnerable and so trusting that she actually invited me into her home while she wasn't there. And sounds kind of risky, but it ended up working out really, really well because what I would do is I would do a category or a zone at a time. So, yeah, like a kitchen, for example, or a bedroom. And what would happen is I would do my process where I would clear everything out, make a giant mess, take inventory, take a note of how many people are in the home, how many chairs are around the table, and I would put things back to that amount in a really neat way. And then everything extra, or like those like one offs or chipped or broken things or expired foods or these like odd things that just didn't seem to fit, I would put into some bins on the floor as suggestions. And so my philosophy is you don't have to get rid of anything. Like if you're attached to things, great. But here is your storage, here are your cupboards, here is your boundary. So here are my suggestions. And what happened? I mean, they're a really special family. They worked really well with me. And so what they would do is they would look in the bins and they would take out the stuff that they actually did want to keep. And there was no judgment, there was no hard feelings either way. And then I would come back the next week, and there was this trusting that whatever was left in the bins would come with me. And I would just do this on repeat 1 day a week. So that gave them a week's time to look through everything and be really intentional about what's staying. And I would do the gritty work of sorting through photos and documents and cards and just putting like with like, so that not only did they know what was there, but I would give them storage boxes and bins for the future so that they could continue easily putting these things away. And it really, really worked. And it was magic. So I'm really jazzed about that type of work because it really focuses on my strengths of getting into the flow state without interruption. I can do magic. But then the opposite is working with especially clients who are in their 50s, 60s. I found a lot more attachment, a lot more emotion, a lot more trauma. And so working with this client, she was really on board. We were working together and we did get through a lot. But she did get really emotional. Like that often happens. Like there's tears, she feels sick. And so I'm really gentle and patient, but I find that at the end, it never really fully felt like completed because there was just a lot of interruption and discussion and story. So it still works. And I still enjoy hearing from the clients, but I do know that when I do it that way, I have to give them every single option for a decision, including a maybe box. So, like, yes, maybe, donate, sell, garbage, recycle. And I give them every single possible destination in the form of a box or a bin. And so that allows them to not trip up. They're holding something and they just drop it in their decision, because what I want to create is a flow state. I want them to be able to make easy decisions without having to like move across the room or tell a story about where this came from. And so, yeah, there's these two different avenues, but
Yeah, I think that just listening to those two different ways, or two different examples, it's great because you're obviously working with this philosophy in this process, and it's what's important in any type of engagement with somebody, with a with a client, is that you have to obviously have to work with the individual person, the individual family, and what they're experiencing, because the philosophy kind of stays the same, but your approach to it, depending on the individual, has really got to be different. Like, you say, maybe if you're working with a younger family, I think probably as like 30 to 40 year olds, we have a very different relationship with stuff than somebody who's 60, because when they grew up, they basically didn't have anything. So
absolutely.
everything's going to be really, really valuable. So yeah, that makes absolute total sense. And I think it's really wonderful that you've got the ability to be empathetic to everyone's individual circumstances. And that's what makes the philosophy and the process work. Because if you're going in there like really like harsh and being brutal, you're going to uncover most of the time a lot of emotion, probably like negative emotions,
Resistance. Yeah,
resistance,
big
anxieties,
resistance. Hmm.
frustrations. And there's no way you can really be intellectual with decision making when you are flooded with literally the chemicals of negative emotion. So that's really cool, and that's really interesting, a way to approach that type of a thing. Yeah, so you shouldn't be trying to make those big decisions when you're like maybe angry or frustrated or not feeling at your best. So how does your teaching education and experience kind of blend into this philosophy?
I think that empathy you speak of comes out of working as a teacher. I think being a classroom teacher, you quickly learn that each individual student is such an individual, and you really have to empathize with where they're at day to day, and that every day can be different. And you have to really develop this understanding that you have to meet people where they're at and identify what they need. And I think working with elementary and high school kids, it allowed me to have an appreciation for that. And also, I think the way that I act as a leader and can facilitate, I have a strength in keeping us on task because I can listen and understand people, but then I can keep the ball rolling so that it feels like the momentum is still there. And I have this ability to kind of begin with the end in mind, which is something that I do as a teacher. With planning lessons and assessments, you always plan a project with the end first. You always build the rubric. That's the how they're going to be graded, and you plan how you're going to be assessing before you begin teaching. Um, it's essential. Otherwise, how would you know if the kids know what you're teaching? And so, and you also as a teacher have to do these formative assessments instead of summative. So that means you do it during the process. So you kind of check in during the lessons or during the activity to make sure that they're engaged. And so I think all these skills in planning and planning with the end in mind and visualizing for the client, because clients struggle with seeing this end result because all they see is the status quo. They only see where they're at now. And so I bring this perspective of this is where it can be. This is like, and I propose, like I imagine it for them with utmost confidence because I've experienced it myself. And so beginning with the end in mind, I'm able to start at the end, work backwards, and then execute. So
Wonderful. And do you often work with children in the family and their spaces? Because, a kid's bedroom and a kid's play area can sometimes be the most chaotic, messy area. I know that, the amount of times we've rearranged my son's play area. Actually, to be fair, my wife does it a lot more than I do, and she's brilliant at it because she'll switch the toys in and out. So he's staying stimulated, and if we recognize that he's not engaged in a specific type of toy as he gets older, then we kind of we pass that on, we thrift it or save it for the next bundle of chaos that comes along. But yeah, can you give us some examples of working with kids in the family? Because obviously the family is a family. It's not just the mom, it's not just the dad, it's not just it's a living, breathing, crazy organism at times.
yeah, this is my passion. So obviously combining both areas of my experience and my career, my passion is to eventually work primarily with children, especially children who have exceptionalities or things such as ADHD or autism, um, because I see them, first of all, kids are amazing at absorbing and learning through modeling and examples. Um, but they also are very capable regarding their psychology of taking on this concept of letting go. I think they're very capable of it, but it's very hard because they're very egocentric as well and attached. So I've worked so far with just one boy who is 8, and we did his bedroom, and it was something I wasn't really sure how it was going to go, but it really blew me away. He was amazing. He perhaps has ADHD, like a lot of young boys are very hyperactive. Um, and working with him, it was so magic because I have this ability to use distraction in a really positive way with kids. And so working with him, I was able to facilitate the same process I do with adults, keeping it really simple. But what I would do with him is I would always pass things over to him. So we would just be bantering and chatting. And I would always just say, like, hey, can you put this over there? Or hey, here, like, can you? And so it wasn't like we were sitting still. We were always moving around the room, and I'd be asking him questions, and there was never a moment of boredom. So I was creating this flow state We were both engaged. There was never a question of what to do next because every destination box was laid out. And it's funny because in the moment, and especially because I'm not their parent, he was able to make really quick decisions and he was able to really express his special interests and showcase them accordingly. And what ended up happening is the dad especially reflected that there's just way less conflict. Because even if his room wasn't a total disaster, there was always this tension around tidying the bedroom. And so without this, they had so much harmony and they were almost bonding more. And what's really neat is I've been checking in and like, yeah, his room like can have stuff on the floor, but he's able to care for it so much easier because we've labeled things, we've made everything super accessible. Because that's the thing with kids is they just need things to be really easy. So if there's a container, don't put a lid on it. Like keep it open. Make sure it's labeled. Make sure it's big enough that it fits everything. Because once it's full, we all have that experience where like we want to put something away, but the container is full. So we're like, what do we do? And so I've heard that he has slowly cleared off his like Lego display table because he likes it to be kind of clutter free. And, you know, he just has like a simple amount of things and he loves his room now. And I think my favorite part of working with him, and this was a bonus, I have a label maker and labels are essential, absolutely essential. Because for whatever reason, our brains, we like won't put something into a container if it's not that label. Like we have this weird, we have to, at least for me, and I'm noticing this with clients, it's like a rule. Like you can't break the rule. You can't put like a pair of shorts in the Lego box. Like, so with him, I I was like, okay, like we're gonna make some labels. And he's like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, like I have this label maker. And he's like, cool. And it was such a beautiful tool because I'm kind of tired of making labels. Like I know how to type and print. It's like a tedious thing. And he's like, can I make them? And I was like, of course. And he was so excited to spell out the labels. So it's like a spelling exercise to print them, to stick them on himself. Like it was so empowering. And now like everything is labeled and it's just like a double win. So it's really awesome.
Yeah, that's massive. And obviously, every time he looks at that label and looks at that box, he's part of that process, like part of the creation of that area. And yeah, kids never forget that type of thing. Never.
Yeah.
That's really cool. How do you feel that your work supports the mental health of your clients? Here at Truehope, we're obviously all about supporting mind and body health through, nutritional means, but having our space, whether that's our business or our personal home, it's really really connected to how we feel, and how we feel is a big part of our state of being. And if you come home to a disaster after an anxious day or a stressful day at work, you're just like continuing that state. And we know how dangerous chronic stress can be to the body. So like how do your clients um benefit through their mental health with the work that you do?
Yeah, I recently heard a term called cognitive carryover. And I think that can be connected to the piles of to dos. I think that without our wish, if we see objects or things that spark, I need to do that, I need to repair that, I need to return that, I need to fix that, whether we are directly paying attention or it's just in our peripheral, it definitely sends a message to our brains and it says, you haven't done this yet. And it stays with us. And I think that is what chronic stress is. It's this, we are unaware of it, but we're living in this heightened cortisol state because there's all these messages coming at us. And no matter how much we try to ignore it, they're there. And I like to use the example of a really clean white hotel room. I think everybody can relate that stepping into a really clean, like really white, bright hotel room just feels incredible. And it feels really calming and relaxing. And you can feel like the tension in our bodies reduce. And what's interesting is we neglect the opposite. So we try to neglect the fact that the opposite is also true, that having cluttered spaces and a bit of a nagging to do, even if it is the laundry and the dishes, it definitely can make us tense. And in my opinion, I'm not sure like the science of cortisol and stress, but I really feel like it does raise. And then there's also that conflict. So this one family, they're saying that it's just like when you want to tidy and you pick something up, but you don't know where to put it. There's no designated zone. It's frustrating because you feel like incompetent, or you feel like angry or resentful at the partner or the person who left it there. And so there's like tension in the relationship, tension in your body, and a frustration with yourself that you don't know how to. And so then you just put it down somewhere different, and then the cycle continues and you're just like spiraling.
Yeah, like I think everyone can agree with that, and they've experienced that in their lives for sure. What's a who's an ideal client for you? Do you work with many different types of people, or is there somebody that a specific type of person that you commonly work with?
I have worked with a variety of residential and commercial jobs, and which is nice because it's nice for me to learn uh, what I enjoy the most. And I would say my ideal client is a young family. I would love to work with a family who, yeah, just wants a bit more of a systematic way to easily store stuff so that they're not spending time tidying over and over and over again. And so that they can also engage their children in being more independent and caring for their things. I also am really curious about ADHD in particular. I've learned that people who have ADHD or something in that realm almost thrive in chaos. And so it's like this double-edged sword. It's like they're kind of a chaotic way of being, but yet it's not really supportive because they become easily distracted. So it's kind of finding this way to support young families and um, neurodiversity and children so that there can be harmony in the home for everyone.
That's really cool, and I think one thing that I that I feel that your work offers is creating harmony within the family
Hmm.
and connecting people, because we all we all live in we all live in the space, and we all have a relationship with the spaces and the people in the spaces and the stuff in the spaces. So if we can create, like, I think philosophies are really important things to have in our lives, whether that's practicing some sort of stoicism, for example, as a philosophy of life. Like, it's really important to stay conscious of how you want to be in the world, and how you want to be in your house, and how you want to be in your home, and how you want to engage with your family. Like, being conscious of the way that you want to do that as your like true authentic self will keep you aware of like when you might slip off that philosophy, and you might be, on a path that you're not actually like connected to deep down. And being aware of that philosophy is super important to not just yourself but your family, because yeah, it's more than just one person, you that lives in your family. And I can probably guess that the things that you implement in people's homes and businesses like span out in their lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's
Yeah,
so many takeaways. But yeah, I agree. It's like if you were to remove or at least reduce the conflict and the tension in the family connection, there would be more space for, yeah, just connecting and enjoying each other's company instead of nagging each other, and just feeling better as a unit. Um, yeah, I think that families deserve this. I think there's this unfortunate normalcy that homes are chaotic and that it's a mess and it's impossible and it's hard. It is hard to develop the systems, but that's why I've done that for you. And it can be easy, I think, to introduce things like reward systems for kids, that like, and a whole like parenting stuff. I think that's where my education background comes in, finding ways to encourage kids to develop better habits and to learn things like it's okay to wait and waiting is good. And, it's important to be really reliable for these kids and these families to follow up and actually acknowledge their wins instead of just always nagging that they're doing things wrong.
Yeah,
So,
I think the more structures we can put in place in the home, especially that engages our parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system, where people are a lot more calmer, is going to benefit everybody. Like, and even to the point where if if you work with you and you're putting some things in place in the home, which is like bringing everyone's anxiety levels down, like I think about how that can is going to improve everybody's ability to digest their food better and engage their neurotransmitters and other chemicals and hormones within their body, and literally start manifesting a more harmonious physical and mental body. So I think that's really important. How can people connect with you, Emily?
I think the best place would be my Instagram, at Less But Better Organizing. Other than that, my email, Emily at lessbutbetter.ca. Oh, and of course, my website, lessbutbetter.ca. I do have a blog page there where I'm starting to kind of spill out some of my research and this philosophy. So, yeah, and just one more note about anxiety after you said that. Um, I've noticed recently more and more anxiety in children, young children. And I had anxiety as a child. And I remember I didn't know what anxiety was, I didn't know the word. But now as an adult, I can reflect back on that's what that was. And I just think that, yeah, like kids really deserve a chance to live a more harmonious life. And nothing against the parents, but children mirror and copy parents. They are being modeled to. And that's so if the parent is feeling anxious in the home, the child will often kind of reflect that back and also show up in an anxious way. And so it's nothing wrong with the parent, but I think if we can create more harmony for everyone and the parent can then model that parasympathetic, calm energy, then I think the child has a better chance to overcome and not carry this anxiety into adulthood.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, um, children are just pockets of energy and frequency, and they pick up and they mimic without question. So yeah, that's a really, really important point. We'll make sure that all your website and your Instagram and everything is in the show notes so people can connect with you. Do you do remote work? Do you have like any like online courses or anything like that that people can check in with?
I don't have any live courses yet. It's definitely on the radar. I'm hosting a live workshop next week, actually, on Monday, April 12th. And that one's for parents. It is around creating harmony at home, and it will be geared towards some specific systems that can be created right away, to support a bit more flow in and out for their kids. Things like schoolwork and artwork and the stuff that we just like all hold on to, sentimental stuff. So that's exciting. And what was I going to say? Yeah, I think that right now I do offer. I've tried a bit of on the phone or like on video consulting, and I find it's challenging. Like I can give as much as I can with systems, but I much prefer working in the home with my clients. It's much more effective currently.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Emily. I really appreciate you coming onto the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Simon. This
Of
was a
course.
treat.
It certainly was. Okay, for more information on anything that we've spoken about in this episode, please make sure you check out the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you so much for listening. This is True Hope Cast, the official podcast of True Hope Canada. We will see you next week.